Despite a weekend of protests, petitions and court orders against it, the White House is standing firm over President Trump's ban on immigration from 7 countries. The president signed his executive order on Friday, bringing to an end a hectic first week in the Oval Office. It halted the entire US refugee programme for 4 months, as well as instituting a 3-month travel ban for nationals from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria and Yemen. But on Saturday, as you've been seeing, thousands gathered at airports across the country to protest. The order was challenged in the courts, with officials from 16 different states describing it as unconstitutional. That led to confusion all over the world. After seeking clarification, the Foreign Office said yesterday that UK nationals travelling to America shouldn't be affected. And responding to criticism of the ban, the President issued a statement last night saying he's not targeting Muslims and that visas would be reissued once new security measures had been implemented. Well, let's talk now to Labour's Shadow Attorney General, Baroness Shami Charkrabarti. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I'm sure you know that Jeremy Corbyn said that any state visit on the back of what we've seen this weekend should now be cancelled. But isn't that a little premature, given this is merely sort of an order only for 90 days and it's not yet been officially confirmed, that state visit anyway?
Well, I think that what we're saying is that this state visit needs to be postponed. We need to use our soft power and our influence against Mr. Trump's Islamophobic policy. And you know, this policy is so bad in so many ways. This is divide and rule, this is spreading hate. It's not even a ban on people from all Muslim countries, because of course countries where Mr. Trump has business interests are not part of the ban. So it's both discriminatory and illogical and corrupt. And it will make the world a less safe place. And so we've got to do everything we can to stand up to this bully in the White House. We're supposed to have a special relationship. That special relationship has to be based on shared values. And so far, what I've seen from Mr. Trump is misogyny, racism, ill treatment of refugees, reinstatement of torture, and just general peddling of hate. But
that special relationship also needs to be based on a very carefully balanced programme of diplomacy. And surely you appreciate that Theresa May just can't go in a first meeting with the new President of America and act in a way that you're suggesting.
Well, I'm suggesting that Mrs. May might actually learn a thing or two from Mrs. Merkel, who has not been rude or incendiary towards the new White House.
In fairness, Germany haven't voted to leave the EU, and Germany don't need the ties with America in the same way that Britain do at the moment.
Well, I think that we can restate our values when it comes to honouring the Refugee Convention, when it comes to equality for women, when it comes to not being racist or Islamophobic without being rude to Mr. Trump. We are suggesting that this state visit is premature. It is one thing for Mrs. May to meet Mr. Trump, and I don't have a problem with the fact that she did that, though I think there were some very awkward moments at that press conference, which I would not like to see visited on our Queen. Whatever you think about the monarchy, Her Majesty the Queen represents the Queen in Parliament, our democratic constitution, and I would not like to see her embarrassed in the ways that we saw Mrs. May frankly squirming at times in recent days.
We're just hearing some news, I'm sure you'll be interested in this, at Downing Street, that you know about the petition to prevent Donald Trump from visiting this country, which is almost at 1 million signatures. Downing Street have rejected that petition. Can I get a response to that story this morning? Well,
I would urge the Prime Minister to think again. This is not about saying that she shouldn't meet Mr. Trump. In fact, I urge her to be a little bit more forthright in restating the values on which this special relationship is based. So I'm not saying that she shouldn't be in constant dialogue with the President, but a state visit is premature. We should not be rewarding human rights abuses by rolling out the red carpet in this country.
Theresa May has been saying that America is a huge and important ally and that Great Britain needs to think long term. Those are her thoughts in just the last few moments.
I'm afraid that sounds like appeasement to me. The world is in a very precarious situation at the moment, and we will not make this world safer or fairer by appeasing bullies like Mr. Trump.
Can I ask you, in your role as a barrister, what do you see as the legal implications for British citizens of what's been happening in America over the last 48 hours?
Well, in general, Mr. Trump is making the world less safe. He is spreading division, and that will, and that, as we can see, potentially, spills over to Canada, spills all over the world. America is a big player still in the world. It's a great democratic nation. I have lots of friends there, including civil rights lawyers who are filing suits as we speak about this policy. It's discriminatory. It is contrary to human rights. It's contrary probably to the American Constitution. It makes this world less safe.
It does seem as well, though, doesn't it, that the majority of people won't be affected. Do you think that part of what we've seen over the last 2 days or so has been a reaction because there's a lack of clarity about how this will actually be implemented? Because, for example, those who were due to implement it weren't even told it was going to happen, this executive order.
I think you make a very important point that there is some chaos going on here as well as the actual evils of the policy itself. Clearly there's chaos at American airports. Clearly there was a lack of clarity about whether dual nationals, for example, Britons who have another nationality or who were born in one of these countries would be affected. And, they can keep tweaking it and coming up with new exceptions for countries like Britain and so on. But the bottom line is this policy is divisive and hateful and discriminatory and wrong. And divide and rule is the oldest trick in the book, but it makes this world less fair and less safe.
Shami Charkrabarti, thank you for talking to us this morning, and particularly appreciate you reacting to that breaking news. It was just reaching us from Downing Street as well. Thank you.
Yes, Dan's given some of the details, but let me just reiterate some of them. Downing Street have rejected calls to cancel the proposed state visit by the US President Donald Trump to the UK. Number 10 saying the invitation has been issued and accepted, and a source saying to scrap the visit would undo everything following Mrs May's visit. America is a huge, important ally. We have to think long term. And the source rejected calls to scrap the state visit as a populist gesture. So that coming from a number 10 source in the last few minutes.